Let's now move back to the Eco Hotel and Suites for the continuation of our live coverage of the 7th Lagos Economic Summit tagged Ehingbeti 2014. Please stay with us.
An efficient and reliable power system is the bedrock for economic growth anywhere in the world. At this year's Lagos Economic Summit, policymakers, economists, business and industry leaders will from April the 8th to the 10th at the Eco Hotel and Suites discuss the challenges of maximizing the potentials of Lagos. Channels Television will bring you live discussions and interviews with participants at the 7th Lagos Economic Summit that will focus on power and other key sectors where stable power would impact significantly. The Lagos Economic Summit, real opportunities, endless possibilities.
This is a live Channels Television event.
From the World Bank, we are bringing some modest instrument in terms of guarantees, in terms of investments in the remaining government parastatals to bear. But this is a collective effort, and I don't think any party in this can do it alone. So we from the World Bank side are ready and able to play our part in the process and are for the long term and with patience, confidence on the success of this reform program going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. And I hope you in the audience are actually taking note of what he's saying. We have because of the circumstances, we are adopting a slightly different format. So we have panelists commenting on what they've heard so far, and then we'll go back to a speaker. So we're going back to Mr. Andrew Foch now in the United States. And if he's available, then we'll have the video. Somebody can stream the video down to us. Okay, Mr. Foch, if you can hear me, you're welcome to this panel session in Nigeria. The subject is managing transition issues from public to private sector ownership. And you have 15 minutes to take us through your presentation.
My name is Matt Futch. I run the Energy and Regulatory Program for IBM Energy and Utilities worldwide. I realize that we have a short amount of time together today. I am being piped in from Istanbul, Turkey, and thank you for the opportunity that you have been given, or I have been given, to present today to the audience. I'm going to make this quick. I'm not going to go through every one of these slides. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. I want to give everyone an idea of who we are as a company within energy and utilities. Not everyone knows that IBM works in this space. We're in about 35 countries. And then I'm going to talk about our observations in the market in Nigeria. And then I'm going to talk about some global experiences that we have observed around the world when governments are attempting to essentially privatize and expand the capital available in their markets and make things more efficient, both from a technology standpoint, reliability standpoint, and a process and social equity standpoint. So those are the three things I'm going to present today, and I will go through them quickly. Slide 3, in case everyone is following. I want to talk a little bit about IBM's role in Nigeria. Of all the countries in Africa, we are the most committed to Nigeria as establishing our anchor base for global operations. You see a quote here from our CEO. I won't read it out loud, but you get the feeling of the sense that we are very much expanding in Nigeria. We've gone from approximately 10 employees to almost 5 times that amount in a very short period of time. So I just want to make everyone clear that we are heavily invested in Nigeria and we are going to expand our presence there over time. And therefore, this is a long-term business opportunity and commitment from our company in the country of Nigeria. So I'm pleased to make sure that everyone knows that, and that's very clear to everyone in the audience. A little bit about IBM in the energy and utility space globally. This slide kind of represents a very small list of projects that we are involved in around the world. We are involved in approximately 35 countries. If you look at it from a meter standpoint, we are involved in approximately 100 million meters throughout the world. We are a system integrator. We do both meter data management, we do grid operations, we do business process, pretty much everything you can think of from a standpoint of making the grid more efficient, to be able to integrate renewable energy, to be able to get power plants to produce more energy and financially to have a much better profile for the utilities and for the governments. Anything you can think of from supply, distribution, especially in the distribution space, we're involved in that. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the expanse and the scale of our presence in the energy space. Next slide. We do not just sell products and solutions. I want to get away from talking about specific technologies. I'm not going to speak about technology today. We are involved in three major areas. We think of energy as a holistic thing. It's very crucial to society and to the economies around the world. We work on solutions and developments and technology, obviously. We work on policy and regulation, which is what I do, and I run that for the company. And then we also deal with industry thought leadership, which is essentially publishing our kind of view around the world on how to make things more efficient, more environmentally friendly, and more reliable, and what is the way in the business market process and the business market structures to make that happen. Next slide. I want to talk about some observations that we have made in Nigeria so far. These are three questions I think that are very important as you guys are making the transition from a heavily regulated and nationalized energy system on the power distribution side to a much more private and open and capital investment intensive industry in order to improve your reliability in the system. One is, are all the folks and the stakeholders in the room, we're talking about government regulators, we're talking about the industry, the new privatized distribution companies, are you prepared to make these changes over the long run? This is not something that can happen overnight, so I think it's very important to think about the big picture and understand the length of time required to really make the transition. Two, there needs to be a very clear set of financial incentives and penalties for performance. I think you guys have gone a long ways down that path, so I think this is an area that things are going very well, relatively speaking. And three, the most important, I think by far, what is the message to the people within Nigeria who are wanting to have more reliable and more affordable energy? And how does the investments that are being made by the new distribution utilities, how are those being articulated to the average person in Nigeria? Not to or within each other, because we all like to talk to each other, but to the people in Nigeria, how is that being articulated? These are three very important things to think about. Some of the things we see that are challenges within the utility companies in Nigeria is the rate and speed of data, the ability to actually finance this transformation, and to be able to fully electrify the entire country in a way that allows for revenue assurance and reducing non-technical losses. I'm sure we're all talking about this today, but this is some of the things that we've seen in the market. So finally, I want to go to my last section. I told you it would be fast. I want to talk a little bit about the experiences that we have seen when countries are attempting to privatize their distribution network, in particular distribution, not just generation or transmission, but the distribution side of the energy supply chain. So this is the most important slide. If I were to leave you with nothing else but just one thing, it would be this slide. There are definitely some best practices to make this efficient, to make it financially feasible, to be able to attract the capital necessary to make it happen, and to meet the expectations, frankly, of the people that are going to be consuming the energy and want to have a more efficient and reliable system. On the left side of the screen, you see the best practices, which are the following: a strong energy regulator that's willing to ultimately revoke licenses and have strong penalties and is willing to be consistent about performance for the utilities. You got to give sufficient and reasonable time for the new distribution utilities to actually create and operate a plan, to be able to finance it, and to be able to perform and show that they can perform. Without enough time, there can be sort of an unrealistic view about how quickly you can make this happen. So there needs to be a balance between the regulation and the ability for the energy utilities to be able to perform. A transparent and consistent communication between the government and the energy utilities, that's very important. And ultimately a clear message about when and where and how these investments are going to be made and how they're going to ultimately affect the consumer and improve their lives and their energy consumption. Some of the issues that we see very often as countries are going down this road are the reliability and financial incentives are changed very often according either to the election cycle or the government or as a regulator begins to change their staffing. That can cause problems. Sometimes governments in other parts of the world overpromise on how quickly the improvements will be made. That can cause consumer pushback when when the system is not performing better in the period of time that the government has said that it would. That can be a big problem. Insufficient data and trust between the regulator and the utilities, pushback on new capital investments because it ultimately sometimes can increase the tariff, and so that's something that has to be dealt with. It's very sensitive, and I understand very difficult to manage that. Or a general lack of political will to kind of see it through, because it can be very challenging to privatize the market. Not impossible, and it's a very good thing to do, but it is very challenging, and everybody needs to acknowledge that. So a couple of places that, and there's a long list, but I just wanted to point out a couple of countries where we have worked with clients and utilities and the government with regards to privatization. One is, of course, the United Kingdom, a highly deregulated and unbundled market. Some of the things that we've learned from what they've done is they've given a very long period for regulatory performance. It's about 8 years. They're very stable about their rate, and their profit penalty system is very clear, and everybody seems to understand it. And the utilities are pushing very hard on innovation in that area, despite some of the challenges that they've had with their smart meter rollouts and some other communications investments. Some of the lessons from the United Kingdom, they've been very clear about what the regulatory framework is that provides opportunity for utilities to profit. And they have allowed for major infrastructure investments that have shared benefits across the supply chain and been very clear about how it's going to benefit the consumer. So generally speaking, things are going relatively well in the United Kingdom. There are some issues, but they've been very transparent about what the goals are, and that has been very helpful to them. In Turkey, where I am currently, there's been a very significant privatization of the distribution system. There are now over 17 new distribution companies. I think it's up to 23 now. And the national regulator, which is the Energy Market Regulatory Authority, EMRA, has been working very closely with the new distribution utilities. I think the lesson learned from Turkey, even though it's not perfect and they're encountering struggles and challenges like everywhere else in the world, is that they've been very good at communicating between the utilities and the regulator about what the responsibilities are for each party and what the level of return on investment is going to be over the long term for the investments, that the capital expenditure investments that the utilities are going to make. And I think the government has been relatively consistent about what the goals are, and they've raised quite a bit of capital through the privatization process. So Turkey is another good example to take a look at. This slide right here is what I call the thermometer of privatization and regulatory reform. It's a very long word, or a long set of words to describe these things that I see that are very important, that we've seen worldwide. They're consistent things that are very important for the market to be able to provide in order to have a successful transition from a highly regulated nationalized market to a privatized market that really provides capital to make these things happen. I'm not going to read through all of these. I'm sure you can see them on the screen. What I would say is that none of them are more important than the other, and that if you can move forward on as much of them as quickly as possible and not try to get too caught up in making everything perfect, it's better to make progress and do it in a deliberate way in all of them at the same time than it is to try to get stuck in one particular category. So that is my slideshow, and that's my presentation. If anybody has some questions, I'm presuming the conference people who are running this program will allow me to know that there are questions. Otherwise, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.